Hero's journey is amazing, and it does shape people into who they become. But if you lose your health, your well-being, or some important people in your life, huge price to pay.
So welcome on the show, Dr. Nina.
So excited to have you here. Thanks for making it all the way from Brisbane. Hey, what's your background? I know you've many different degrees and you probably have been in many different types of research, but if you just sort of give me a compact picture of what your background is, it would be great for our listeners to sort of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Sebastian. It's a pleasure.
Anytime.
I'm a geneticist, and I have been doing, as you mentioned, lots of different kinds of research, most lately in the stem cell field for about 10 years. And currently I'm mostly interested in epigenetics.
Oh, wow.
So that's my area of expertise.
Oh, very cool. So when we look at the DNA research that there used to be and that we thought, I think there was one place in time where we all thought, okay, our destiny is basically set on what our DNA says and nothing will change ever, so we are just doomed or really lucky. And nowadays the modern genetics looks very differently at it and, brings epigenetics into it as well. Do you mind just explaining where we actually came from and where we are right now?
Well, I think with lots of science, it happens that way. Once we discover something, we believe that we know everything about it. There is all to know. And then we start doing more and more research and finding out more. And I think it happened with lots of genetic fields because now there is vast, broad area of modern genetics. In each and every one, we have discovered how much more we don't know. And it's brought us this completely new way of seeing things. Before we believed we knew everything. Now we know that there is so much more we don't know.
Yeah.
And I think we're doing so much better now.
Oh, fantastic. So much more awareness of actually what every individual can do as well, yeah, for their health.
Yes, the last century genetics, let's call it that.
Yeah.
Believed that we are born with a set of genes and that's all we have and have no ability to influence that whatsoever.
Yeah.
The modern genetics more, and including the part of the epigenetics that I'm really interested in, is recognizing now that there are certain aspects of our influence that we can make when it comes to our DNA makeup.
Wow.
So we cannot change the sequence of our DNA molecule and the genes, but we can influence the ways how it's utilized, how the DNA responds to the environment. The structure of the DNA is not very linear. The DNA molecule is packed. We know it's a helix-shaped molecule, but it's further packed in the tertiary structure, in the space. And then on top of it, there are proteins, there are methyl groups, other mechanisms sitting on top of the DNA. That's why it's epigenetics. That makes certain parts of it more open or closed to be read, to be utilized. And we are realizing more and more that these frames of reading the DNA molecule for each individual can be influenced in different, and are absolutely influenced by the environment.
What would be an example of that we previously thought, this is just how it is, we can't do anything about it, and now we actually learned what it's about, whether we actually turn on that DNA by using epigenetics?
Well, lifelong development of human beings is an exercise in epigenetics. So everything we learn is part of the epigenetic process is occurring in our brain. And then all the adaptations our body makes to adopt new foods, new environment, to respond to the new bugs, to the new...
So if we say look, someone has really, let's just think about, we move into a new subtropical area, for example, there are new bugs, right? There's a new mosquito, and I have a really strong reaction to that bite, and it's really not really pleasant, or maybe even, I'm really affected by it. Would you say that that is a DNA makeup, and that then that's something that actually can be changed through environment? I'm just looking for a really specific sort of, for me, anchor point in terms of understanding this concept of what it really means to a person.
It's really hard to draw the line so specifically because we know about the immunity that's very versatile, and it just enables that natural ability of the genes coding for immunity in human body to be very differently connected and differently employed at different situations based on the environment's requirements.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really go there as a basic example at this stage. But I would say, even if you just looked into the exercise, what happens in your muscles, they're still using the same DNA molecule they have the whole time. Your genes haven't changed in your muscle cells, but the aspects of that DNA, the parts, the frames, have actually been slightly shifted. So you're using either more of the proteins that you need, or you slightly shift into different parts of that gene and harvesting different proteins that can really help with that.
Right.
So it's going to be, even looking into the, just shifting that exercise focus and making it a little bit more particular about something is going to trigger some of these epigenetic mechanisms as well in our cells.
But we are very certain that environment plays a big role of like how
we're made that way.
Yes.
We are absolutely made that way because the main objective of the living creature is to survive, and in order to survive has to adapt. And that's our innate ability to adapt and to adjust our body and our cell to the environment.
Right.
That's how we survive. We have pretty narrow window when you think how we can function by the temperature, humidity, air, lot limiting factors. But in that narrow frame where we were suited to live as human beings, we make our best by adjusting to it.
Right. So if I think about, like, let's say a Nordic creature, like let's think about a human like a creature, right? So it's not like our test.
But we are creatures.
There you go. Like it's like a test animal, right? So we have this test animal growing up in a really cold country, and is really accustomed to low temperatures. It's harsh winters, that type of thing, which means probably that person can keep warm much easier than someone who grew up in the tropics. So when you move that person into the tropics, our species into the tropics, then does that mean if they look after the epigenetics and do certain things that helps them, they will adapt and their DNA will be switched on and off accordingly? But if they don't look after it, if they don't use the learning that we have,
it's going to happen anyway. It's how we are made. We are designed that way. It's the basic mechanism. It's what we can only not thinking about black and white. It's like having this string of lights in our DNA. We can actually dim them, turn them on and off occasionally with certain things we do or don't do. And
when you say turn it on and off, you're probably talking about lifestyle changes versus then genetic manipulation, right? So that's a very different field, right?
No, I'm not talking about anyone doing anything to your cells or your DNA. I'm talking about what you can do for your own self.
Wow.
And how you can really foster some of that potential in your cells.
Yes.
Because living in the same way and doing exact same things is not going to open up your DNA potential. It's going to remain forever potential. Once you start implementing changes or making some small shifts or doing things a little bit different or putting certain challenges to your biology, then your cells will kick in and say, oh, we need to deliver on this. This is a survival thing again.
Right. So what is the potential of a human? Like, by looking at it, like, would you say that if we see really fast runners, if we see really smart people, would we say that's the potential of a human and everyone has this potential to go there to a certain degree?
There are certain limitations we all have, but there is also so much more potential we have. And these limitations are just our perception. If we shift the way we perceive them, we will just see this expanding space between us and whatever we want to achieve. And these days, I think the modern living is making lots of people to focus on the external environment. So we focus on people, places, and things, rather than directing our attention a little bit inward to this beautiful space inside, that we can really make a change.
Yeah, right.
Because it's really hard to control external environments, because it's pretty much impossible. There are so many moving parts that we cannot really have control over, but we are still trying hard. And instead of doing that, we can put our energy and time and our focus and just acknowledge this really beautiful, quiet space inside that's offering us so much. It's keeping us alive. We don't need to do anything. It happens for us. We breathe, we exist, we get the nutrients, we get the warmth, and we get all the necessary elements for our survival. And we have not really to do anything. Our body does it. We have to some extent, affect the external environment for that. But everything else that happens inside of ourselves, it just happens on its own. We can't even direct it. We can make shifts and changes, but we can't really turn it on and off.
So when I think back to our species that comes from the really cold area and needs to adapt to the new one, I heard you that they will the body will do that anyway, because it realizes, wow, I need to sweat more to actually regulate my temperature and all of that. But what I also hear you saying is that we have an effect on how effective the inner, like our body, is actually in doing things, and we can affect that by what environment we create for ourselves. So if we put ourselves in a really artificial high-riser building,
or a highly stressful environment,
that's it.
That's going to affect us immensely, and that's something where we have control.
Oh, okay, so we know that if we put that species in a really highly stressful environment, it will not adapt to the new climate as well as someone. It
will, but it will take more toll on overall functioning biology, and it's going to use more energy, and it's going to potentially, over a certain period of time, result in certain things going wrong, because it just won't be able to keep up with the pressure. It's not only about the environment in terms of temperature. I'm talking about these pressures that most of the people in the modern world live under. That's why I mentioned stress, because it's becoming such a way of living.
Yeah. I guess I know it's not an absolute connection, but the way that I understand it is DNA expresses everything of us, right? It's not only how our eyes look, but it's also how we I guess how we even speak, like the pitch of our voice. I don't know, all of that. Is it like the whole spectrum of what a human is?
Well, it's a big part of it. Let's say that way. Yeah. No one really knows how much.
Yes.
We know that there is that interplay between DNA and environment.
Just out of interest, what are the theories of how can my lifestyle affect my genes, the cells inside? Like, I can't see it, playing dumb here, or just a little bit naive.
I think you know more than that. Yes. Well, we have figured out by now that the lifestyle plays a big role and makes a huge difference. And we know that the diet, the exercise, and how much we sleep, and lots of these aspects, how much water we drink, if we drink alcohol. So all of that influences our biology. But I think it's becoming more and more obvious that there are other aspects of our living that we don't necessarily fit into lifestyle. It's our mindset, it's our beliefs, our thoughts, the way we feel about the world, how we perceive the world. All of these things contribute to our biology, either in detrimental or beneficial way. Because first we have to see where we are. We have to assess and say, oh, am I really thinking the right way about this? Is this really the most beneficial way that serves me? Or I might need to shift my perception a little bit and maybe take things in a slightly different angle. People in very dire circumstances discovered when they couldn't change the circumstances, all they could change in order to survive was to change the way they perceived.
Yeah. Have you heard about this man who was, I think, final stage of cancer, and he thought, might as well have a really good time, and so he watched all the funny movies. And I think eventually they kicked him out of the hospital.
He was laughing a lot. Probably he missed that in his life.
Right. So, and that's the type of thing you mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really extreme example, but that's sort of like certainly changed his whole take on life, seeing it in a much lighter way, in a much more cheerful way, and somehow that did something really radical to his body, and by the looks of it, took the cancer away or dimmed it so much that he was fine to leave. I don't know if he's still alive, but I never followed up on that. But I've heard
these
it more
things
than
are
once.
always influenced from very different factors, from a multitude of factors. You can't even say with certainty did or didn't work, but obviously made him feel better.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I read a book by this Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl, who was a doctor, and he lived a long life after that. And he said that his observation in the concentration camp was that it wasn't really a physical attribute that helped people survive. It was their mentality. It was how they perceived and if they had the purpose in their life to live for. If you can do it in these kind of horrific circumstances, imagine what we can do in everyday life, and we have so much more choice about everything. And that's something that I really try to build into my programs, to educate people about the focus, that they can choose their focus and they, based on that, can make their choices. And I think lots of us tend to forget about that. We just don't really pay attention enough.
So there's one message in the mind over body then?
Well, our mind influences our body and vice versa. It's a unity, and being a human being is not only physical existence or only the mind. It's the connection between the two, and then there is the emotional aspects and there is spiritual aspects and so much more. And all of this absolutely influences our biology.
Wow.
And on some level, I think it's time for us to take responsibility and look at that. Not to feel bad we didn't know about it before, we just didn't, doesn't matter, but take responsibility now.
Yeah. We had someone on our show a while ago, Megan May, and she phrased it as, you outsource the responsibility to the white coats or to the medical profession, but that will never work because there is no magic pill. For all the different ills, it has a lot to do with what we do.
Yes.
From it. And I can see nowadays that changing really by having more control over your data to start with, or to control over actually, I understand who I am and maybe what I'm allergic to, or what helps me and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And then people just really taking charts themselves and using the internet as well to just being educated of like, okay.
Really have to be mindful about not diminishing the value that modern medicine brings to us.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we can also take, as I said, responsibility for our own health. We are very blessed. This is the first time in human history that we have all this comfort and safety and prosperity, all these scientific, technological advancements that make us live these very comfortable, safe lives. And And still, we just sometimes take it for granted, and we don't really say, oh, what is more there? How we can even improve it more, and what can I do for myself? These things were given to me, but there is much more I can do for myself. And then it influences our family, our community. More fulfilled, more joyous our life is, and more we contribute to our own physical health, mental health, and our emotional stability and balance, we can be better members of the community. We can contribute to this world. Rather than suffering from all these elements we wait magic pill for.
Yes. Oh,
and lots of that potential is already sitting in our DNA.
I actually remember this one, I think it's in the book Happy. It talks about an Italian community that more or less moved to the US, and the people that maintained sort of the lifestyle and eating the same way, but especially having the human interactions and being just as joyful as you would imagine someone in an Italian small village to be. And these people,
it's the connection between the humans.
They would live long and happy lives, and then the people who would also move over there, having the same food but living somewhere remotely from,
more isolated.
That's it. At that moment, it wouldn't come. So the human connection had a major connection to how long they lived and how healthy they were. Right.
Interesting to attribute that to something so intangible, like connection between the human beings.
My background is a little bit looking a lot about diet, and the lifestyle around diet and what to put in your body and all the superfoods that come with it. Do you think that it's overemphasized and there is more that, like, what can you see any signal in the research so far that would suggest it's not as important, or would you say it depends on the individual?
I can't really tell you if it's important or not. I can only tell you the balanced diet, the most natural diet we can have, is absolutely important. All the superfoods and everything is just a way of, it's a lifestyle, it's a choice. So some people do it in a very natural, intuitive ways. Others do it in a more prescriptive ways. Nothing wrong with either. And as long as it works for an individual, that's fine. We have gone through a number of different shifts, I think, in the recommendations, even from World Health Organization. These things have certain expiry date occasionally. I see the superfoods as one of these trends that might go in and out. Are these nutrients in higher concentrations are really going to increase our well-being and our health? I'm not sure about that. I'm not really in that research, so I can't tell you.
It prompts me to think, like, right, like even if I don't have the budget of buying all the health foods that they are out there, there is a lot to be said of just being really mindful of my mental state, and
absolutely.
So, I'm not doomed just because I can't afford the latest superfood or anything like that. It's a lot to be said of just making good common human connections, having a good cycle of friends, and just feeling really part of something. And I guess having meaning in life would be also one of those states.
The existence of human beings is so versatile. We can exist in so many different circumstances, in so many different parts of this world. We can have so many different experiences. As long as these circumstances and experiences make sense to us, as long as we allow the best part of ourselves to be there, as long as we honor who we are and how we cherish our inner being, we're going to do good for our biology too. It's safe to say.
Having a good time is actually a really good thing.
It's a great thing for your biology.
I love that. Fantastic. So would you say that the 100 is the new 60 when you actually follow through and really look at, how can I look after my genetics and therefore, create an epigenetic setup that really helps me to live longer and a happier life. So is there the potential to really feel younger much longer than what we expect to be normal?
Well, it's a choice again.
Wow.
We live much longer lives now. By just living longer, doesn't mean that we will be necessarily feel younger if we don't make a choice to do that. And if we don't maintain our outlook of life, the way we act, how we behave, and what kind of choices we make as we are young, because we are. We just put these labels. We put these expectations. We adopt certain models that were given to us, but they might work for previous generation or 2 generations ago. But now the time has changed. You have very fit, healthy 50, 60, 70-year-olds. They do experience certain changes in their body. They do go through certain challenges health-wise, but they're still quite fit for their age. And they can make certain choices and live as much younger people if they want to.
So, looking at, aging Sebastian there, is in his early 40s, sitting on his couch. So I have a choice, right? So
well, you can get off the couch in the first place. That's a good choice.
Right. And it's so what would be the difference between 2 types of Sebastians? Like, what can you just give me like one and the other?
Well, one can have, let's say, the Sebastian that's a little bit more into the traditional ways of looking at things. He can believe that certain age brings certain responsibilities and that he's getting older and there is nothing he can do about it. The other new version of Sebastian, an upgraded one, 21st century one, he can actually understand that he can still meet these commitments and these responsibilities, but also look after himself, meet his own needs, and really experience the joy and pleasure in his life, no matter what age he gets to. And in that process of, it's a lifelong development. We even use the word aging. It's a lifelong development of human beings. Our biology changes to a certain level. But we have so much more at our disposal now to make choices how we deal with it.
Right. So life happens to me and I can either be okay with it and just accept it and say, like, this is life and this is just as joyous, even though it doesn't feel happy, like whatever the happening is. Or I can say, wow, life is just getting worse and worse. And
well, exactly.
Right. And so I guess from a biological thing, we don't have to go into it too much. But what I've heard is like my pH will change depending on whether I have a positive outlook or a negative outlook. And if I have an acidic body, it probably creates, I don't know, all sorts of aches and pains and ages me.
Yeah.
Versus like the body actually overall feels vibrant and will not sabotage itself through the thoughts.
And the joy and the pleasure that you experience and that positive spin you put on things. I'm not talking about being delusional. No. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about seeing things and accepting things as they come. Acceptance is a big part of that process. But it's also making putting the certain spin on things just can change the outlook. And if you're negative and you feel very stressed about things, naturally the cortisol levels in your body will go up. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And of course it's going to have a detrimental effect on your body, even more. So why would you do that? There is no need for that. We're already exposed to certain stresses anyway. It's just life. You can just be a little bit more positive or more proactive. Use your intuition and just really see and feel just to that feeling. This feels good. So whatever feels good and brings you joy is definitely good for you.
Wow.
As long as you don't really impact anyone else around you in a wrong way, you're fine. And your biology will really benefit from that too. Because we are much more complex beings than we think. We're not only physical and mental beings. We have all these other layers to us. And these layers impact us in so many different ways.
Wow, we really should learn that at school, right? Like this is an amazing...
I wish we did.
Right? You might learn really... you might learn at school how to do certain sports, exercise, and that's all good and good for the body too. But in terms of mindset, that seems to be, my belief is that, the school has certainly a responsibility to create, at the moment, to make someone be able to participate in society, and that can be a little bit lopsided of like, how would I get a job? But there's much more to it. Like, you know, there's also responsibility to be, I guess, a good or happy human for the human, as you said, like being selfish just for that person alone. But if you have a happy person and they just do it for themselves,
they are not selfish.
They are not selfish.
A happy person is not a selfish person. Yes, they will share their happiness with others. It's just the natural way of humans. We are wired that way.
Yes.
And we are wired to coexist and share our emotional state with others. We have the so-called mirror neurons in our brain, and wired to mimic the emotional state of the human beings close to us without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
It just happens to us naturally.
Yeah.
So what are we going to spread around us if we are happy? Well, only happiness.
Yeah.
It's very natural.
Yeah.
And these kind of good vibes are something that's going to really make us feel good, but also people around us.
Yeah.
And more that kind of spin we put on things, no matter what happens, is going to help us survive in the best possible way, even in some difficult people, places, and things. This is the external environment. We can't really influence that much. And things will happen.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the same research that would say the person that gives a compliment to another person benefits from it and its body. The person that receives it feels really good about it too, and
Yes.
that's good for their health. And the person that observes that there was a comment given to another person also benefits from it, right?
Of course. In education, it's not something we could expect the school to give us initially. Especially when we are young, we need to learn so much, and we base our education, build up on that with facts and findings and all scientific technology and all of that data that information is huge today. We have a vast amount of information available. But do we really make the best with it? If we are so overexposed to it, how much we can really take in and how much it suffocates us with some unnecessary information too. So we just have to work on the balance. I think the main word in all of this we were talking about today was balance. Balancing act between things we were exposed to, how we perceive things, what we take in, what decisions we make, how much we give in into positive or negative views, and all of these things that can really make our life different.
Who will tell me that I'm too much on Instagram or Facebook? Because that would be one of those. I heard you, before you come into the show, you talked about PPT, and I guess that's really focused on the external things, meaning you focus too much on other people, too much on where you are, who you are, in terms of place, and then also the overall things that you surround yourself with.
Yeah. There is no really human connection there.
How can I monitor myself? Like, how? That's a knowledge that is really, really powerful. If I know that I get distracted too much by external things that will not benefit my health, especially probably my mental health, but by the sounds of it, my whole epigenetics.
And physical as well.
Yeah.
Part of making choice how we spend our time is about, again, being an awareness. What is happening right now? And because we are so focused on external world, we don't really stop enough and just think for a moment, feel for a moment what is happening right now. So I think that's a crucial point to make in our day. Say, what is happening right now? What is happening around me? What is happening inside of me? How do I feel about this? Is this bringing me joy? How do I relate to what's going on? And once we start doing that on a regular basis throughout our days, we will be able to pinpoint things that bring us joy and those that don't. Things that really make us feel good, and the things that really weigh us down. And then it's easier to make choices.
If you think about sort of the 70% that apparently don't enjoy their job versus the 30% that do. You know, there are some
I don't know
statistics.
if we should go there.
But you know, if you think about it, like maybe we all have a choice, and I think we do actually.
We do.
By the way, like I've seen
Most
so
of
many
us,
people
yeah.
who feel like they jumped the cliff by quitting their job before they found another one, but there are also a lot of people that really made the right decision of just finding something that that helps them to feel good about it. And if that means a pay cut or moving cities, sometimes it's what it takes to be happy. It certainly happened to me, like once I did that. Yeah,
It happened to me so many times.
Oh,
and all what I'm talking about is deeply founded in my personal experience, not only in my professional work. I have had lots of my work done in these areas in medical field and in the hospital clinical environment. I realized that life is really unpredictable, quite short, and most of the time the best and the worst things that happen we can't influence. And once you position yourself in that space and you start seeing that, it changes your view, changes your perspective of life. I had to make some really difficult choices. This whole outlook really helped me make this in the right way for myself. And like you said, it's not just jump the cliff and quit the job. To inform, inspire, and educate our choices. We do it in multiple ways, but the best way to do it is to really have that awareness of a current situation and then the point in time in the future, wherever we want to place it, and everyone has a different aim, where we want to be.
So that sounds there's quite a bit in from sort of Eastern philosophies and sort of ancient philosophies that think about mindfulness is really important there then and certain practice, daily practice that really help us to be in that space of reflection or the space of just knowing where we're at.
This is that part of our humanity, of our existence that is probably a little bit overlooked at the moment. Quiet space inside that place where we can make a huge difference, but we don't go up there often. And I agree with you, it does have that overlap with Eastern philosophies, but we don't have to mystify it. We can make it just very open and say, I'll open my mind to the facts and I'll open my heart to the way I feel. And I'll really then be able to comprehend what's happening. And then I'm going to think and feel where my choices are, where I want to go next, and see how in the best possible way I can get there. And believe me, I did that in my life in very, very difficult circumstances, and my biology supported me too. Maybe I was just lucky with the way my biology worked, but in some ways it did support me because it was really who I was, what I was standing for. Deep inside. So being tuned in with that inner being of ours is really important in this process.
Yeah.
And being a scientist, it's really hard for me to give you a prescription for that. And often people look for prescriptions and these quick fixes. But quick fixes don't work. They're just temporary relief. So I think in this age of instant gratification we live in, it's sometimes a bit misleading. We believe everything can be fixed quickly. This takes a bit more time, but it's a much more rewarding.
Yeah. So if I sort of paraphrase a little bit of what we've talked so far, so we're basically saying overall DNA can be switched on and off through epigenetics, and epigenetics is we have a lot of control over our epigenetics of how we live our lives.
Although we don't know how exactly it happens, but we believe we do. Yes.
Yeah. So research can certainly see hints of like this is probably how it will work, and there's more and more evidence supporting that.
Yes.
And so you've found quite a few things that seem to work really well in going towards helping our epigenetics, our DNA. So what would you recommend someone to, where would they start? Would you, if they listen to this up to this point, they might think, so I have to meditate. Probably that's what it is. And enjoy.
That's a good start.
Okay, all right, that's actually a good one.
It's a great start. Absolutely. Moment of silence and stillness.
Daily.
Sometimes that helps just at that particular moment. It just brings that opportunity to really slow down and be quiet, be still, and let things come. We underestimate that creative, intuitive side of ourselves as well. And it's being pushed away by the things we do. So much doing in how we live. I was one of these people who was doing so much. Then I learned how to move to that other side of the spectrum and become a little bit more gentle and more reasonable. And it's so much more rewarding, believe me. Yeah. I don't know if you had that experience with your life. And I think many people go through the similar.
Yeah, it's known as the hero's journey in a sense, hey? Or it could be described like that.
Yeah.
I wonder whether humans...
Hero's journey is amazing, and it does shape people into who they become. But if you lose your health, your well-being, or some important people in your life, huge price to pay.
Yeah.
So you need to stop for a second again and think, is this really worth it? Or I want to make my choices a bit sooner and save and preserve some of this.
Yeah,
because we have one body. We can't really just transport ourselves. They tried to transplant the head, by the way, scientists, but it failed. We can't even do that kind of swapping between.
Yeah, and I guess even if it would be possible, if the mindset doesn't change, then it will be... And thinking about it, like my dad worked in a hospice, and... So he sometimes tells me what people think, and that's sort of like, people in there between 35 and 75, and they are at a pivotal point of their hero's journey, often too late. But there's certainly that reflection happens when you're dying, and Steve Jobs said, like, I definitely should have spent much more time with people, rather than playing with the iPhone.
Look what he built. Inevitably he had some regrets about that too. So
yeah. And basically, I don't know how old he exactly. He was in his 50s, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So that body basically didn't want to work anymore, and I guess what we are talking about is like, it doesn't have to be like that, and. A genius like himself, like, there's a legacy that is massive. He didn't live as long as other people. But the price
he paid was high. Be curious and try something new every day. And this might not sound like much, but it's going to open up new avenues in the physical world around, but also within your own self. And you will learn how you can really make the best of it. When I was in a very, very acute stage of grieving years ago, I had lost someone very dear to me, and I was just paralyzed with grief. At some point, I went to learn dancing, Latin dance, but I now can see the value of me being there, surrounded by people, but I was not forced to talk to them. In the first, because I was not able to do that. So I spent first 3 months there without talking to anyone. I would just be polite, say hello, and that was it. I didn't have to, because you go dancing.
Yeah.
Then it gave me that surrounding of human. I had this 1 hour in my day that would help me step out of my grief and my mind into my body and just be really present there in a different, made so much good to me. It helped me really deal with this because I was on my own. I didn't have my family around me. I didn't have many friends close by. So I was pretty isolated. This was my respite. And so sometimes these things come.
Yeah.
That's why I say, be curious, try new things, and give life a chance to surprise you. And as long as you do that, you will be young. I promise you. No matter your age, you will stay young.
Yeah. Oh, that's really exciting. I think this knowledge will see it more and more through also to I guess counselors and people who coach people, other people, and just that knowledge that more and more comes forward, and it's great that it's more and more backed up by research as well. Because
I educate people about genetics, but I also tell them about stuff that can really contribute to their genetics, contribute to their biology. And it's not all about the diet or the exercise. It's much more to that.
Yeah. So by the sounds of it, that was a choice of yours to do. There's also that focus on yourself that is really important, and being selfish is a really, really important step to look at.
Something that you do just to really have a break. So there is nothing really selfish in that.
Yeah.
They do sports, they do lots of different things, they do arts, crafts, you name it, hiking, playing guitar, singing, whatever, somewhere, and meditating.
Yeah. And then the opposite, I've seen sort of older people, for one reason or another, getting older and being not able to maybe run their own household on this. So they're placed in a completely new environment, sometimes limiting environment too. And I remember a couple of people that, that died soon after, because I could see that their life sort of was by the environment determined to be over. There's not much there anymore. There's not the friends close by. At the moment where you move people out of an environment that often has really good intention, people in rest homes or, just moving them into a new city that has better climate, but if the human connection is not there anymore, if they don't have the rhythm and routine that used to support them, then health can decline really quickly.
And if it doesn't feel right for them, all the benefits are pretty much lost then.
Hey, I've normally 3 questions that I ask everyone who visits, and it's always interesting to hear what the answers that are. If you don't mind, sorry, I didn't explain that to you before we came online.
It's okay.
Very simple. What are the 3 things that get you out of bed every morning? What are the drivers for you?
First is joy of living. I'm very blessed to have that.
So you just enjoy being alive?
I just have this innate joy of living. That's one. The sun is the other one, the sunshine outside.
Wow.
And the people I love.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful.
I wake up happy.
I relate to that. All of them. And what excites you at the moment, or like currently, like what's your focus that you really, really enjoy doing?
What excites me at the moment the most is this opening space in human minds. I can see this happening everywhere, and it's just being so profound, and it's being so ever-present, amazing me, that we are finally looking into some places that we never looked before, including in science. I'm thrilled that so much has emerged from the neuroscientific research, from epigenetic research, and that we are thinking about it in a different way. It's very slow. It's a very gradual process, but it's happening.
And the last question is, what's your take on human existence? Like, why do you think we even exist? Like, why do we have consciousness that exists right here?
To enjoy.
Meaning of life, being enjoyment.
So far, the only thing I can really see underlying force is to really enjoy, to find the joy of living. That's something that's part of our existence from the day one. And why would we even question that at any point in time? Really?
Yeah.
We do change physically. We develop. We learn. Some of these learnings are helpful. Some are not really. They probably present itself as a burden. But that little spark of life stays in us, because no matter how old we are, we still want to live. No matter what's happening around us, we still choose to live. We make things help us survive and live, and that existence is sacred. And what's the better way of honoring it than being joyful and bringing that joy to this world?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a great outlook. And good for your genetics too.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Good for you on so many levels, yes.
Well, Dr. Nina, thanks for coming. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you making time to
Thank you,
come all the way.
Sebastian. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, I look forward to have you back on the show. There's so much more that I would love to talk to you. So please do come back.
Yeah, I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.